So last week, Syb was sick, and I had to do the show with Moon. And then yesterday, when we were meaning to record, I wasn't feeling particularly well. It's just something about the winter, guys. You would think that, you and I as Canadians, Syb, we would be used to this time of year, but I guess just getting older makes it worse. But anyways, welcome back to Maximum News, ladies and gentlemen. We are finally here recording this on Wednesday, January 17th. We're very happy to be here with you. Not a lot of terribly huge gaming news happening at the beginning of the year. That just tends to be the case for media in general. January kind of sucks. February doesn't suck as much, but still kind of sucks. And then it's March when things tend to pick up. Although, in February, we are getting a lot of good games, so at least we'll have those to talk about. Oh, and I forgot to mention something kind of cool to you before we started, Syb. Remind me after we're done. I got to tell you some exciting news that I can't talk about publicly. But anyways, let's get into the gaming news. Oh, and of course, I'm joined as always by Sybsidian of the Triple S League.
Oh, I am doing better. Thanks for everybody who asked. Yeah, it's been rough.
This poor guy. Weeks. You should have. I said in case you guys watched last week's podcast, he was in the call with me and Moon when we were recording, but he didn't want to talk because if you heard him talk, the poor guy, you sounded like you were dying, man. And I'm so glad that you're still here with us to talk about gaming news. So we got a lot of stuff to talk about. Maybe just not as as exciting as we're kind of used to, but still very important stuff to talk about. First of all, we're going to talk about this thing that sort of just has been making the rounds on social media. Lots of people responding to it. Let's talk about Ubisoft, Syb. I'm kind of... a lot of people might be used to me calling Ubisoft Diet EA on this show because I say it so much. And I say that because they're not quite as evil as EA. They're still evil, though. Ubisoft is sort of like... let's use a Lord of the Rings comparison. Ubisoft is sort of like Worm Tongue. I think that's the name of the character that speaks to King Theoden. That's his name, right? Worm Tongue?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Ubisoft is like Worm Tongue, while EA is like Sauron. That's sort of the degree of evil that we're talking about here. So not quite as evil, but still evil. And they're just... It's like they live on another planet, man. Like, I don't understand what the hell's going on over at that company. And just something that one of their executives said this past week just continues to solidify that opinion. So, well, forgive me, not an executive, but somebody in an important position. A guy named Philippe Tremblay, because, they're a French company. The director of subscriptions at Ubisoft recently spoke to GamesIndustry.biz about the launch of their new Ubisoft Plus Premium and Ubisoft Plus Classics subscriptions. Now, I didn't hear about this, but I'm assuming that by the names that they're allowing access to a lot of their old games, which is pretty cool. I mean, Ubisoft, believe it or not, used to be an amazing company once upon a time. They're responsible for making Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time, which is one of my top 5 favorite games of all time. Responsible for Splinter Cell, responsible for the original Beyond Good and Evil, which obviously didn't sell very well, but is a cult classic. Tons and tons of other great games that I could mention. Obviously, all the old Tom Clancy games. While speaking about these subscriptions, Ubisoft was asked about sort of their role in the evolving subscription market. They acknowledged that they were sort of behind Xbox and PlayStation, obviously, and understandably, because they're the two biggest companies, and plus Xbox Game Pass in particular has just been killing it. And they still need to expand to that degree. One thing that they do sort of believe is standing in their way, though, and in the way of just people looking to use subscriptions generally, is the fact that people still use a lot of physical media. And that is changing, though. I think a couple of months ago we mentioned that 2023 was the first year that digital sales surpassed physical sales of games. So that is changing. However, that has led to people being scared about what that means regarding ownership of games moving forward, because unless you have a physical copy, then is there a chance that companies might revoke your digital copy on a whim? Well, when Philippe Tremblay says stuff like, well, we're going to take away your games. Well, no, what he said was, unfortunately, I forgot to bring up the damn quote in front of me. If you'll just give me a second, I could actually read it verbatim. He said something to the effect of video gamers should learn to not be comfortable with not owning their games. Okay, I got the direct quote here. Forgive me for that, guys. He says, and I quote, "One of the things we saw is that gamers are used to, a little bit like DVD, having and owning their games. That's the consumer shift that needs to happen. They got comfortable not owning their CD collection or DVD collection. That's a transformation that's been a bit slower to happen in games. As gamers grow comfortable in that aspect, you don't lose your progress. If you resume your game at another time, your progress file is still there. That's not been deleted. You don't lose what you've built in the game or your engagement with the game, so it's about feeling comfortable with not owning your game. I still have 2 boxes of DVDs. I definitely understand the gamer's perspective with that, but as people embrace that model, they will see that these games will exist. The service will continue, and you'll be able to access them when you feel like. That's reassuring." And that's the end of the quote that I'm going to read. So, look, Syb, honestly, I'm going to be honest. I would be all for switching to digital as the dominant method for purchasing my games. And I think a lot of people would be too as well if 2 things happened. One being that less physical media brought down the costs of digital games, which they don't, except for Alan Wake 2. But, that's because Remedy is actually a company with a soul. And even then, a large section of the consumer base would still want physical media, but still, that would be a step forward. But the other thing, obviously, is DRM, right? Games I purchased that use DRM can be taken away on a whim. And we've seen this happen, right? It's stuff that gamers have a good reason to be worried about, especially because in comparison to stuff like CDs and DVDs, games are at the very least often 4 times as expensive as those things are. So naturally, people are going to want to continue to purchase physical media so that way they can at least secure some degree of ownership, right? So naturally, because the Ubisoft executive said this, people all around social media have just been saying, yeah, no, we're going to make sure that we don't give into this sort of thing. There will always be a market for physical media, even if it isn't as big, because you guys keep saying and doing stupid crap like this. So anyways, Syb, your thoughts on this? And you also have an addendum to this that you wanted to bring up as well, right?
Little bit. Yeah, it's the fact that so first I'll do some translation here. I am
sure.
As some of you know, I'm a somewhat adept. I don't want to say fairly or famously, because that would be way overestimating my skills. But I am somewhat adept at translation, not in the spoken word. Like if people are speaking, I can't keep up.
Yes, he has this piece of technology installed into his AI. That's I think the market term is BS meter.
Yeah. So I have this ability where I take linguistic words. I translate them through various languages, and I come up with basically a more intact version of what the meaning is. And this is really handy when a lot of the thing that I use it in the most meaningful way is when people don't know the meaning for their name because their name doesn't have a registered meaning, and I go through and I find what those vocal sounds meant through multiple cultures in similar circumstances, and then I can string together a translation for it. So allow me to put some skill behind this guy who is the head of subscription services. We want more money from you losers.
Right.
Now, I was going to do that with a French accent, but I think that would be an insult to the French people as a whole, because this is such a monumental jack.
Here, I'll say it in French for you, okay? Donnez-moi tes argent, connard. There you go.
Yeah. So it's this absolute arrogancy of developers and people who have jobs that up until recently didn't exist. And in most cases, if these companies were told, hey, look, you have to bring it down to the absolute basic number of people, period, this person also wouldn't have a freaking job. Because people like this are here at these companies to find a way to separate their users from their money in the most egregious and the best and most fastest way possible, irregardless of, sorry, I use that word again, regardless of the human cost. These are the people who sit in rooms, listen to somebody speak about how if you do this little trick, you can make children, steal their parents' credit card and give you as much money as they could possibly put on it. It's why these companies don't have like return policies where it's like, hey, yeah, if you spent like 10 grand over a week, and we could tell that there's something wrong there, that you went on the spending bender. It's like we're gonna freeze that account, and we're gonna call you up and be like, hey, are you doing okay? You just spent like $10,000. Oh, that wasn't you, that was your kid. Don't worry, we're gonna give you it all back, because that's not the kind of business we run. No, that's not what goes on here. That's not what that Ubisoft and these other companies do. These companies are like, hey, how can we separate our customers from their money in the most fastest and quickest way? And it is frankly disgusting. This kind of behavior is absolutely vile in like 100 different ways, but it comes especially vile coming from the head of a portion of a studio that 20 years ago didn't exist and probably won't exist in the future if this stuff gets banned, as we're seeing in China. And so this guy is quite rich coming from him. And there was a response to this by a certain Sven Winkel.
Hail.
I hope I'm bad at pronunciation normally,
Just Sven.
but when I'm sick,
He's the greatest Sven that ever lived. Keep going.
Yes, Sven, from of course Larian Studios, and he responded with this quote. Not quote, but he responded with this, which I will now quote. Whatever the future of games looks like, content will always be king. But it's going to be a lot harder to get good content if subscription becomes the dominant model and a select group gets to decide what goes to market and what does not.
Right.
Direct from developers to players is the way. Sorry, that's direct from developer to player.
That's how you keep up with competition. That's how you make sure that quality maintains, it's not artificially suppressed through the subscription model.
And to loosely quote one of the greatest, not only scientific, but also marketing minds of the time, who has unfortunately passed away, Steve Jobs, marketing people, sales people, whenever you put them in charge of a company, they will guarantee the destruction of that company and any other company who is attempting to alter the industry in a healthy way.
Yeah.
Because they do not want to have to keep up with all the newest things that make any product better. They would rather sell you the old product 1,000,000 times into the future. Doesn't matter if it fills every possible landfill the planet has. Doesn't matter if it slowly chokes us out. There is no innate desire to grow in a healthy direction that risks the structure of the company. Right. And that's what these people do. That's what the salespeople in these companies do.
That's exactly what happened to Disney over the last few years.
Exactly.
And look what's happened to them.
Yeah, and you look at what's happening to Steve Jobs' own company. They put in a bunch of salespeople, and what's the biggest criticism of their brand? It's not innovating anymore.
Yeah.
And of course it's not innovating anymore. They're not interested in innovation. They're interested in selling the same thing over and over and over again. And so this is unfortunately the mind virus that gets into these companies as a whole and destroys them from within, because people like this guy are sitting here going, oh, no. We don't need to create new content. We don't need to create anything that is better. We just need to put, and I mean, look at the names on this stuff. Ubisoft Plus Premium, Ubisoft Plus Classics. They make it sound like you're getting something that's above and beyond what you already got or what you can currently get. No, that's not what you're not getting anything better with these offerings. This is the same garbage that they've always had. Now, again, sorry, I know some people really like Ubisoft games, but just generally speaking, I'm talking about them not bringing anything new here. And again, it's not a hit on the developers who make games, classic games that people like. I'm playing a lot of classic games right now, and I love them. That's not a hit on you, the player. That's not a hit on them, the developers. It's a hit on the guy who's throwing a new paint job up and saying, "Hey, look, I'm now going to sell you the same thing that you could have gotten yesterday, but now it costs you $5 more." For nothing else. We put on a fancy coat of paint. That's it. That's what I'm talking about.
And the convenience of getting all these games easily digitally when all you had to do is just go get your old consoles out and play them on those things. Yeah.
And I want to make it clear that we're not hitting on this idea because we've been saying for ages that Nintendo needs to do this.
Oh,
right?
God, yeah. Yeah.
So we're not hitting on that. But because that's not what's being discussed here. What's being discussed here is a guy whose job it is to put you into. And by the way, you don't own these games. If you go to Ubisoft Plus Classics, you're not buying copies of these old games and then retaining them forever. No. You're buying a subscription, and the minute that you stop that subscription, you don't get access to these games anymore. Period.
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you.
And if you read the fine print in some of these agreements, they're not even going to hold on to your game files for that long. They're going to cloud save your content. They're going to make sure that you can't access that without an updated subscription. And then when you haven't paid or been on the subscription for more than, I don't know, could be anywhere between 3 months and a year, they're just going to wipe your data because why care about your saved games? And again, that's the problem that we have here. We're not having a problem with the concept of offering classic games even on a subscription. But what we're pointing at is the obvious greed that they're doing this with, and the way that they're kind of spitting on everybody, saying, you really need to get with the program. The program is now that you pay us constantly a premium for everything that you want. And the minute that you stop paying, it all goes away.
Right. Yeah. No. I'm gonna go and see if I can find your games either through a DRM, a free service like GOG, or I'm just going to do what is within my legal right to do, which is to emulate these games. Like, for example, Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time, one of my favorite games. I can do that because I own a PS2 and I own a copy of the game, so I can do it legally. So, yeah, go to hell. Yeah, so hopefully people will continue to see that is the more reliable option. And you know what, Syb, even though this is concerning, I have to have faith that because it has happened so many other times with so many other companies, that if Ubisoft continues to go down this road and put out increasingly mediocre product, what's going to happen to them is going to be similar to what's been happening to the aforementioned Disney or even Activision Blizzard, and how the mind virus has sort of affected them when they used to have success. It's that they're going to wither away, and people that offer innovative new products are going to surpass them, and things will continue on as they normally have. Still, it's important to talk about this sort of stuff so that way we can make sure that we continue along that free market, tried and tested and true path that we always have, So, all right. Now that we talked about that, let's move on to more depressing news. So Suicide Squad.
Depressing.
Sorry?
So depressing.
Yeah, it's so, okay. Suicide Squad killed the Justice League. That was a game that was supposed to come out last year, and then it got delayed almost an entire year because I don't think it was because it was necessarily a response to the bad impressions that people had. It might have partially been that, but I think it was because they wanted to just move it to a time where they had a greater chance of financial success. But even then, I don't see how that, given the impressions that people have been offering up, I don't see how that's going to change that much, especially with this past week when a bunch of official impressions of the game have been coming out from a variety of very big name news outlets in the gaming industry. Everything from Kotaku to IGN and to GameSpot and all that. Everybody has managed to get their hands on Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League this past week. And Sybe, I'm shocked across the board, even at an outlet that it loves to puff up mediocre crap like IGN, even they were saying that this game does not look good, at least in terms of gameplay. I'm going to sort of rattle off a lot of the common sentiments that people have been saying. Apparently, the game is exactly what we have come to expect from what we've seen in the trailers. The gameplay is very, very tropey. I even read a couple of people that said that it is very reminiscent of the gameplay in Anthem, which is not a comparison that you want to hear. Specifically, what you will get in Suicide Squad in terms of gameplay that is similar to Anthem is stuff like point defense. So you go to an area, you have to defend it. A whole bunch of different swarms of enemies come towards you and you kill them. Then you apparently have to wait a few seconds before the new wave starts back up, and then you just rinse and repeat. And also you gotta look for important objects that will help you continue your mission. Yeah, stuff like that was also in Anthem as well. Another developer said that it's sort of like Redfall all over again. Another journalist, said it's like Redfall all over again. It's like a developer that is making a game that isn't their normal fare, and they're selling it to an audience that isn't interested in live service, Fortnite, and Destiny-inspired gameplay, right? So why the comparison is apt here, the people that made Redfall, they're responsible for making fantastic games like Dishonored and Prey, immersive simulators. And then they went and did Redfall, which is more akin to that live service type of gameplay, and that ended up being one of the worst disasters of last year. Same thing with here. The people behind Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League obviously are Rocksteady, the people behind the amazing Arkham games, some of the best combat ever, arguably the greatest comic book-based games ever made. And then they go and do this crap, live service games, which are not their bread and butter, and everybody hates it. That said, though, there are some positive things. Primarily that has to do with the story and the writing. Everybody, across the board, said, well, at least the cutscenes are great. At least the characters have charm and the humor is well written. But I can get that by watching 20 other comic book movies, right? Which I would rather dedicate my time to than playing this game to get that. Because when I play a game, I play it for the gameplay primarily. And doesn't seem like it's going to be worth my time. And besides, it's not like I was going to spend any time with it anyway. It's coming out on February 2nd. But you know what also comes out on February 2nd, Sybe, is Persona 3 Reload. And my God, I cannot wait to play that. Definitely going to be spending more time with that. So, Sybe, your thoughts on this? Is there any chance, any hope that this game turns out well and that it gets embraced by the gaming public?
No, because they never moved away from the, again, how do I say this without sounding like an absolute dick?
That's okay.
They never had the brains to move beyond this concept. This is it's so I can write a better story in I gave it about 30 seconds of thought. Here's my better take on it. Brainiac decides that he wants to invade the primary, the primary Earth, which I can't remember what it is. But he wants to invade the primary Earth. He needs to do weapons testing, so he goes to a version of Earth where, Superman and all them are all the bad guys, and he gives the weapons to the people who are they still spitting in the face of anybody who tells them what to do. So Brainiac very smartly says, here's a bunch of weapons that I've designed for you to actually kill Superman and all them, because let's face it, I've watched is it Invincible? I might be.
Yeah, it's Invincible.
It is Invincible. So I watched Invincible. I watched The Boys, and if Superman was a bad dude, I'm sorry, but Harley Quinn is not going to last for more than a few seconds at best. Like, it's just
A millisecond.
yeah, it's just not like, again, I refer you to all of these amazing other products that have come out and told similar stories. Without some kind, like, without like playing into and answering that question, it just comes off like, kind of an idiotic thing. Like, the concept is poor. Like, oh yeah, they're going to stand up against these. So either one of two things is happening here. Either the heroes, now aka villains, are not actually villains because they're not willing to just, I saw that one scene that's in the trailer where it's like they all get picked up by Green Lantern and brought over, and he starts monologuing. It's like, no. If he was an actual, like, real villain with any level of intelligence, he just crushes them all, into a fine red paste and then monologues. Like, you don't have this, hey, I'm going to conveniently keep you in a restraint device without disarming you and bring you over and float you over and then start to monologue at you. It's like a bunch of people who watch Saturday Morning Villainy and they think that is the actual, like, peak of villainy is like what they saw, the characters from Shrek do. Like, that's the level of stupidity here. So, I mean, it's the storyline is a joke. And when you have a hero like Superman, the most important thing to do is to have a good story, which they used to have, and a lot of, old-fashioned comic books it is there. But I mean, they recognize the power issue at one point in the 70s and 80s. They were like, okay, Superman's getting a little too strong here. He's bouncing nukes off his chest, for crying out loud. They needed to introduce some weakness to it. And instead of being smart about it, like I'm sure anybody who writes any Batman fanfic could have come up with a better story about, these guys having to use their brain, which is what we see in The Boys, right? In The Boys, it's like these guys got to outsmart the superhero villains because there's no way they can just beat them in a fight, right. And so that kind of stuff is like, there's definitely an option there. And if any of these writers had spent 15 minutes watching either The Boys or Invincible and had taken notes on how to write a story, it probably would have been better. But again, they're not interested in writing a story. They're not interested in catering to people who are intelligent. They think that the majority of gamers are idiots and will pile and shovel money towards them because they can have a character who looks like some third-rate. I trying to remember the names of some of these Suicide Squad members.
King Shark, Deadshot.
I can't even remember.
Yeah.
Harley Quinn is the only one I remember off the top of my head.
Fair enough.
Shark Boy, obvious. Like, but even then, it's like you guys aren't even doing the fanfic properly. And Asmongold raised a good point. Is like, why does Harley Quinn look the least sexy that she's ever looked in this? Like, that's and again, there's some qualms to be made about that from that kind of a perspective, but the question is still the same. It's like, why are you guys disrespecting the fans when you're attempting to make them pay out by giving them fan service?
Right.
It's like you guys don't even know the first rule of, like, business. It's like, holy crap. So no, I don't think there's any. I think there's zero hope for this game. Yeah. I think it'll be shut down within 6 months to a year, and they'll keep it going that long just to kind of make it so that they save a little bit of face, and going, oh yeah, no, lots of people played this game, but like, let's face it, this is another Babylon's what was it, Babylon's Fall, or
yeah,
this is another, like, nobody asked for this. You've done absolutely no good story writing here at all. I will say 100%. I think Tower of Fantasy has a better narrative than this steaming pile of garbage. And that game, you have to understand, half of that game they made it so that you can skip the story because they realized that after the first arc, which is like probably about like 5 minutes of story, maybe 10. It's like that first 10 minutes of story is actually really good. It's really emotional. The acting is actually, like, really done well. After that, that's the hook part. After that hook part, the characters from that point on have really bad, and I want to specify this, really bad AI voices doing the audio, doing the scripts.
Mm-hmm.
That's how bad it is, and that's still better than this garbage that they're shoving out.
Jeez, that's saying something. And
Yeah.
The saddest thing of all, if I'm not mistaken, I'm just looking this up right now. Yeah. So Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League is coming out in 2024. The last game they put out was Batman Arkham VR, which was 2016. So they've been working on this game for 8 years, almost a decade. And this is what we got.
Yeah.
From the same people that gave us Arkham Asylum and Arkham City. G to the G. Well, yeah. Well, at least, like I said, I have Persona 3 Reload to play that day. Sorry, Rocksteady won't be giving us that Superman game that everybody's been begging for, it seems. Anyways, let's move on from that. What's going on with GameStop? Oh, good news. Yes, good news. Tell everybody the good news, Seb.
So everybody, and I know this won't come as good news to absolutely everybody.
Well,
some people are going to be heartbroken, and so heartbroken. And I hate to be the one to break this news to you, ladies and gentlemen. GameStop is canceling all NFT purchases and sales from their NFT shop. Excuse me. From that shop. Which, if you listen very carefully, you'll hear what I said.
Yeah.
I am ecstatically happy with this. Finally, we are finally moving away from this absolutely just awful concept.
Mm-hmm.
And thank heavens we finally are moving away from this. I have never wanted anything gone so bad in the gaming medium. I like microtransactions, all boxes, like they were going to be worse. The NFT was going to be worse than all of those things.
Sure.
Imagine all the microtransactions, imagine all the loot boxes, but instead you're getting NFT things that you have to spend more money on to either save or access, and then sometimes you can sell them. But weirdly, only the people who are connected seem to be getting anything that's of value. And then when you're moving anything from any game to any game, which was, again, another dumb concept, the fact that you'd play Skyrim, take a sword that you looted from there and move it over to COD. I mean, technically, I guess they're all owned by the same company now, but that was never going to happen outside of companies.
Yeah.
And if it were happening inside of a company, you've just destroyed any form of actual, immersion. Mm-hmm. You've destroyed the concept of immersion. You've destroyed everything in the realm of trying to have any sense of coherency when you're working on this stuff. Everything's got to be made with basically the same engine so that you can transfer these items back and forth.
Yeah.
The concept was stupid, dumb, and very, very, the only people who were profiting from this were the big bankers and people who were putting money in it, and then would just use it as a way of taxing your gaming on top of everything that you were doing. Because that's what it was. If there really is a demand for new stuff in other games, well, you've got modders and you've got the devs who should be listening to the modders. And if you don't have that, then, again, stupid. So I'm so glad this is gone. I could rail against this for an hour, but I am so glad this is finally bloody gone, and I hope it stays that way.
And it only lasted
garbage.
Only lasted 18 months. Yeah. That's why that's why it's important to recognize fads when they're actually fads, ladies and gentlemen. And this was certainly one of those. And GameStop, I'm so disappointed in you. With all the effort that gamers have gone to keep you guys afloat when you guys should be dead, they turned you into a meme stock. And this is the way you treat them. Well, yeah, well, I don't know how much longer these guys are going to stick around for. Yeah. Just bad business decision after bad business decision. We just got a couple more stories. Saib, there's an MMO scam that isn't called the day before.
No, but it looks like it's playing by the exact same playbook.
Okay.
Like this is so weird. So this is a company who's got some questionable background, and they're coming out with this game that's been under development for just under 3 years ish, give or take a little bit. And that's what we kind of don't know. Who have used so much like pre-bought assets and other portions. Puppy is going crazy. That even the picture of their office was a stock photograph from a buyer.
What?
Yeah, even their office photo was a stock image that you could buy that had been slightly like alterated. And again, so that's the company, and I won't go into it because there was a guy who went through and he took all of the footage that they had, and he went through the Unity store and said, here's all the assets that you can buy in the store right now that are being utilized in the game. And it was like almost everything that he could identify on screen during the trailer footage
Yeah.
was all of these things that you can just buy. Now, I'm not saying that there's a bad that's bad. There's lots of indie developers who start out at a company and who use bought assets to fill up their game because they don't have the skills to create a 3D Kraken. But you can buy one in the store, and it comes with a whole bunch of animation rigs and stuff like that, and so they use it. They can use it, and they can fill in a hole that they don't have, especially if they're making it with a small team. And I'm not necessarily against the idea that a large MMO that has an enormous amount of content and is aimed at a huge player base. I don't even think that in and of itself is a bad idea. Some people argue against that, but I think that it's not necessarily a terrible idea for them to have or attempt to make a game that has the bulk of their work has been done by other people. I think that's a very smart move, and I think we are headed towards a day in the technological side of things where you don't need to make a fork every time you want to add a fork into the game. You can just buy a fork. You go onto the store, you're like, hey, I need a fork that's from this time era or this fantasy setting. Great, here's 15 variants. You know what? Let's buy all the variants and then add them in at random into the game. And then therefore you have a wide mix of visual things. And that's cool. That the concept is not necessarily bad. But it seems that that's not what's going on here. It seems that this is basically just an asset flip being touted as being a traditionally developed game. And that's where I wouldn't call it lying because I don't know if it's intentional, but that's where the bad communication at the very minimum is. So we're gonna and really why I bring this up is that I think this is just the tip of the iceberg as far as these kinds of games that we're going to get in the future. I think that this game, I think that the day before, I think that all there's going to be a new lineup of games that are going to come out, and they're going to offer you the moon. They're going to offer you everything you could possibly think about, and they're going to try to like make it look like they are giving you all of that stuff, and really what it is it's an asset flip. They're buying this stuff. The guy who did this one video, kind of taking everything apart, he took all of the animations, all the footage in. It was about 90% of what he was able to identify on screen, and in grand total, that was about $1,500 worth of stuff from the asset stores.
Wow.
So, $1,500 put into an AI tool that mixes them up and puts them into the game. It's like, is that going to be a good game? I don't know. I'm gonna kind of like sit on the side and say probably is not going to be a good game. It's probably going to be an absolute. It's going to be bad. It's going to be really bad. I don't think it's going to be a good game at all because the company behind it seems to like lying, and anybody who's a kind of likes to lie about this kind of stuff, you can't really trust what they're saying, and you can't really trust the products because they're going to get, because they're not interested in truth, they're interested in selling a lie. And I think that that's what is going to be there. So I think this game is going to absolutely crash and burn. But it doesn't matter, because if you can make, even if you can make 20,000 sales, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money, and you don't even, and a lot of those people, they're not even interested in giving it back. I know people who bought the day before, and they're like, nah, I don't want my money back. I spent 4 hours in the game. That's like $10 per hour. That was nothing. And it's like, to them that is nothing, but to other people, it's
everything.
A lot.
Well, not everything, but it's a lot.
It's a lot more, and they can't afford to do that on just out of whim. We're in a great position because we can buy a lot of games, and we do get a lot of games given to us for free to try out. But at the same time, we also support a lot of game developers who are in what you typically call early alpha / these are indie developers, teams of like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people maybe tops. And we do support a lot of those types of games, and I do enjoy whenever I see a Vampire Survivors game. I'm not against that. I'm not even against the concept of asset flipping. I really like the Vampire Survivors type genre game, as we've covered before. And there's just played another game. A lot of the enemies were asset flips, but it was the way that they had combined it that made it to be like not a terrible version of it. And again, it only cost me $6. So I spent 12 hours kind of mastering it and completing it. And I was like, over the course of a couple days, and it's like, yeah, that's like 50 cents an hour. That's good. That's decent entertainment for me. I'm okay with that. And good job on them. And yeah, that's more than, I don't even want to return the game if I could, because it's like, no. They did a good job. They earned that money. It's not the best, but these guys are saying this is the best. And really what I wanted to do with talking about this story is, you haven't seen nothing yet. I think 2024 and beyond is going to be the slew of asset flipped trash that we're going to be getting, not just on Steam, everywhere. That's going to be showing up everywhere, is only going to get worse.
Yeah.
Because this kind of thing is profitable to certain types of people who can make hype stuff. The community around gaming hasn't come down on those crap iPhone / Android store games where it's a clear asset flip. It's like they've got all of the famous characters from the Avengers, but it's not Captain America, it's Captain Shield guy. It's not the Hulk, it's the Bulk guy. And it's it's clearly a rip off. It's an asset flip at best. And it's just like that's the kind of stuff I think we're going to be getting them a lot. So be careful with games. Be careful of game trailers that you're going to see, because you're going to start seeing more and more and more of these kinds of things. Really investigate a game before you jump into it and play it. Make sure it's from somebody you trust and not somebody who's just streaming it because they've been paid to stream it for the first 3 days that the game is out, and then turns out that it's just garbage behind the scenes. Avoid that kind of stuff, because it's going to be getting a lot worse. I think it's going to be getting a lot worse, and I don't know what we can do to avoid it as a community, because sadly a lot of people never really did stand up to this stuff and say, look, no, we're not getting into this stuff. This is ridiculous. We're not going this far, because we didn't, as a community of gamers, they didn't push back harder on this stuff. I think we're going to start seeing a lot more of it, and unfortunately, it's probably going to end up being a bigger problem in the future.
Yeah, because AI is certainly going to help with the proliferation of this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
You know what? I think we're just going to end it on that, because I don't want to talk about another sad story. I mean, we all know about Capcom and their whole DRM business. Well, maybe we'll talk about that next week, because I'm sure people are going to be talking about how it's affecting all the mods, the wonderful Resident Evil mods, over the next week, and then we'll talk about it next week. But yeah, we're just going to end it there, guys. Unfortunately, not a lot of great news, but just take solace in the fact that at least for the first few months of 2024, we're going to be getting a lot of great games. We got Grand Blue Fantasy Relic coming out at the end of the month. We got Unicorn Overlord coming. We got Rise of the Ronin, Dragon's Dogma 2, the aforementioned Persona 3 Reload. It's going to be freaking great. And obviously a whole bunch of other games that are going to be coming out later on this year that we're expecting. Games like Hellblade, Black Myth Wukong. It's lots of stuff to still look forward to. It's just this wasn't the best week for news. All right. Thanks so much for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank Syb, as always, for doing the show with me and providing his insight and for celebrating that he finally has his voice back. Syb, did you have anything you wanted to plug before we finished?
Unfortunately, we are kind of in a bit of a slowdown now. Unfortunately, trying to get stuff out. Lots of issues with that. And it's been rough. I've been really frustrated with it because I wanted to start 2024. There's a ton of videos that I want to cover. I do want to make an overall look at the genre of the Vampire Survivors type game and covering a little bit more of what I really do feel is a big renaissance for MMOs. I think we're going to enter a new golden age of it coming up shortly here, because of all of the things that people have been enjoying and the types of games that are making people realize that, hey, story is really cool, but so is community. Is there a game where I get both of these at the same thing? And it's like, yeah, and I don't think there's anything that's out there that's quite perfect yet, but it's setting up the stage for it. So I want to do some videos covering that, but unfortunately my voice, as you can tell, is pretty shot still, and this is about the best I've been doing for the past couple of weeks. So so unfortunately a little bit slower on that. We're going to be covering lots more stuff going forward though, so don't worry about it. And again, always check out Ash's new channel called Sonometry. He's been loving doing that kind of stuff, and it's been doing really, really well. So yeah, throw him some love.
Yes, and you guys could just find me on all the regular forms of social media, just at Max Derrat. I'll put links to that in the description box below, along with whatever else is down there. All right, sorry, I gotta go. I'm pretty tired. Until we do this again next week, ladies and gentlemen, I want to remind you, as always and as per usual, stay yellow.